What's going on YouTube? Listen up, young elder gang. This is Dr. Obar Simon at you with another banger. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video, fam. I hope this video get at least 100,000 likes. In this video, you will find history, definitions, scripture, information, and best of all, what we Americans have been deprived of from the beginning, the truth. Keep in mind, this content used in this video is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. The information provided on this video is not to be construed as legal advice. We are not legal attorneys. For legal advice, please seek out a licensed legal advisor or attorney. We will give you the total truth as we best understand it today. Be sure to hit that like button, young elder gang. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Hit that bell and don't forget to check back with us every day for new content. All right, let's get started. The Dred Scott case stands as a stark reminder of the tumultuous history of slavery in the United States. This landmark legal battle, reaching its climax in 1857, shook the nation to its core and exposed the deep divisions surrounding the issue of slavery. The case revolved around Dred Scott, an enslaved man who dared to sue for his freedom, igniting a firestorm of controversy. The Supreme Court's decision declared that African Americans were not citizens and had no standing to sue in federal court. Furthermore, the court invalidated the Missouri Compromise, pushing the nation closer to the brink of civil war. The Dred Scott case underscores the importance of vigilance in safeguarding the rights of all citizens. To fully grasp the significance of the Dred Scott case, we must first journey back to the Antebellum Era. The Southern economy, heavily reliant on so-called slave labor, clashed with the growing abolitionist movement in the North. As the nation expanded westward, the debate over so-called slavery in new territories intensified. Keep in mind these people were native indigenous people to this land who were POWs, slavery by way of prisoners of war. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 attempted to maintain a balance between slave and free states. The Dred Scott case shattered this uneasy truce, exposing deep-seated divisions and setting in motion events leading to the Civil War. At the beginning of 1820, the United States was composed of 22 states, a big jump up from the original 13 colonies. The Louisiana Purchase had doubled the landmass of the country, which meant that there were new states to admit. What this did was create some real tension between the North and the South on the issue of so-called slavery. Would the new states be free states or slave states? Would they get to decide for themselves? The entire nation was dependent on slavery to some extent, but some states, as we've discussed, were more directly involved than others. So, with predominantly northern states pushing to end slavery and southern states pushing to keep it in place, it became a bit of a moral and economic tug-of-war. This dispute led to the Missouri Compromise, which designated part of the Louisiana Purchase as free territory and part of it as slave territory, which would balance congressional power as more states entered the Union. This compromise, though, came at the expense of black people's lives. But as the United States expanded, all individuals wanted to travel across state lines, and that created some unique legal issues. The core of Dred Scott's legal argument was that he had lived in free areas of the country with his enslaver Illinois and the Wisconsin Territory. The federal government at this time did not have specific legislation addressing the issue, so the United States Supreme Court was left to sort things out. If an enslaved person is moved from a slave state to a free state, is that individual now free? What if you're riding on a train leaving a slave state and pass through a free state? Is that black person free on the train while it's in the free state but enslaved again when it passes back into a slave state? These were big questions that the country was wrestling with, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. Dred Scott's journey began like that of countless other enslaved individuals trapped in a system that denied their humanity. In 1834, Scott found himself in the free state of Illinois, accompanying his enslaver, an army surgeon named John Emerson. He later moved with Emerson to Fort Snelling, located in the Wisconsin Territory, also designated as Free Territory. In 1846, with the support of abolitionist lawyers, Dred Scott took the bold step of suing for his freedom. Their argument rested on the premise that their residence in free territories should have granted them their freedom. The Dred Scott case, initially confined to the local courts of Missouri, would eventually reach the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. The highest court in the United States is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is considered the final appellate court, meaning it has the power to review and overturn decisions made by lower courts. Key points about the Supreme Court. It is established by the U.S. Constitution. It has the authority to hear appeals on cases from both federal and state courts involving federal law. It is composed of a Chief Justice and 8 Associate Justices. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the United States. Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution created the Supreme Court and authorized Congress to pass laws establishing a system of lower courts. Dred Scott's journey took an unexpected turn when his enslaver, Dr. John Emerson, relocated to Fort Armstrong, Illinois, in 1834. This move proved pivotal as Illinois was a free state, its constitution explicitly prohibiting slavery. Despite remaining enslaved, Scott experienced a taste of freedom in Illinois. In 1836, Emerson received new orders to Fort Snelling, located in the Wisconsin Territory, another region where slavery was prohibited. This relocation further solidified Scott's belief that his residence in free territories should grant him his freedom. Scott's experiences in free territories fueled his desire for liberation. While residing at Fort Snelling, Dred Scott's life took another significant turn when he met and married Harriet Robinson. Taliaferro, unlike many slave owners, believed in the sanctity of marriage even for enslaved individuals. The marriage, recorded in Taliaferro's official records, would later serve as crucial evidence in Scott's fight for freedom. However, the question of ownership cast a shadow over their union. The birth of their first daughter, Eliza, further complicated matters. Born in 1838 aboard the steamboat Gypsy in free territory, Eliza's status would later become a point of contention in Scott's legal battle. In 1843, Dr. John Emerson died, leaving his widow, Irene, as the owner of Dred Scott, Harriet, and their daughters. In 1846, Scott filed suit in the St. Louis Circuit Court, arguing that his extended residence in free territories should have legally emancipated him and his family. Scott's case rested on the legal principle of once free, always free. However, the legal landscape surrounding slavery was far from simple. The issue of state versus federal law remained a point of contention. Scott's case would soon become entangled in a web of legal complexities. Dred Scott's initial freedom suit, filed in 1846, encountered a series of delays and setbacks. Despite the obstacles, Scott's legal team remained determined. In 1837, the Missouri Supreme Court had ruled in favor of freedom for a slave named Winnie. However, in 1850, the jury ruled against Scott, influenced by prevailing racial prejudices. Scott's lawyers appealed the verdict, taking the case to the Missouri Supreme Court. The stakes were higher than ever as the nation grappled with the growing sectional divide over slavery. In 1852, Dred Scott's case reached the Missouri Supreme Court. The state held its breath, the nation watched, and the court prepared to render a decision. In a devastating blow to Scott, the Missouri Supreme Court upheld their enslavement. The court's reasoning rested on the premise that Missouri law determined an individual's status as free or enslaved. This interpretation nullified Scott's time spent on free soil. The ruling highlighted the uphill battle faced by enslaved individuals seeking freedom through the courts. The Missouri Supreme Court's ruling did not extinguish the flame of hope within Dred Scott and his legal team. Irene Emerson, now remarried to a Massachusetts abolitionist, transferred ownership of the Scott family to her brother, John F.A. Sanford. This maneuver provided the necessary grounds for Scott to file suit in federal court. In 1854, Dred Scott filed suit in the United States Circuit Court for the District of Missouri. The federal court, however, proved no more receptive to Scott's pleas for freedom. The judge ruled that federal courts should uphold the decisions of state courts in matters of state law. In 1856, the Dred Scott case reached the United States Supreme Court. The case had captured the attention of a nation increasingly divided over the issue of slavery. The Supreme Court, composed of 9 justices, represented a microcosm of the nation's political landscape. Scott's lawyers argued that his residence in free territories should have automatically granted him his freedom. Sanford's legal team emphasized the property rights of slaveholders. The court's decision would have far-reaching implications for the future of slavery and the fragile unity of the nation. As the Dred Scott case unfolded before the Supreme Court, it became a focal point of national debate and political maneuvering. Newspapers across the country devoted countless column inches to the case. The public engaged in heated debates about the case, further fueling the flames of sectionalism. Politicians weighed in on the case, often along partisan lines. The newly formed Republican Party seized upon the case as a rallying cry. The Democratic Party struggled to maintain unity amidst the growing national crisis. Section 5, A Nation on Edge, anticipating the Supreme Court's decision. As the Supreme Court deliberated the Dred Scott case in early 1857, a palpable sense of anticipation, anxiety, and uncertainty gripped the nation. The court's decision, expected any day, promised to have profound and potentially devastating consequences for the future of the United States. The nation held its breath, bracing for the impact of a ruling that could either uphold the fragile peace or ignite the flames of sectional conflict. The very fabric of American society seemed to hang in the balance as the court grappled with the complex and deeply divisive issue of slavery. The weight of history rested on the shoulders of the 9 justices as they prepared to render their verdict. Their decision would determine the fate of Dred Scott and his family, shape the legal landscape surrounding slavery, and influence the course of American history for generations to come. The nation waited on edge for the Supreme Court to speak, its voice carrying the power to either heal a nation or tear it asunder. The Dred Scott case, once a seemingly ordinary freedom suit, had become a crucible testing the very soul of America. Section 1, A Nation Divided, the Supreme Court hears the case. The United States Supreme Court, housed within the neoclassical grandeur of its Washington, D.C. building, became the epicenter of national attention as the Dred Scott case reached its climactic stage. The year was 1857, and the nation, deeply divided along sectional lines, braced itself for a decision that promised to reverberate through the halls of justice and across the land. The 9 justices faced the daunting task of rendering a judgment in a case that had become a lightning rod for the contentious issue of slavery. The gravity of the situation was not lost on the justices, nor on the crowds that gathered outside the court. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Lawyers for both sides prepared to deliver arguments that would determine the fate of Dred Scott and his family. Dred Scott, his weathered face etched with years of toil, sat in the courtroom, a silent observer to the legal battle. His fate, along with that of his wife Harriet and their daughters, hung precariously in the balance. As Section 2, the arguments Liberty versus Property. The Dred Scott case presented contrasting interpretations of the Constitution on slavery. The courtroom was a battleground of liberty versus property rights. Dred Scott's lawyers, led by Montgomery Blair, argued for his emancipation based on his residence in free territories. They invoked the principle of once free, always free. Scott's team challenged slavery's constitutionality, citing liberty and equality. They portrayed Scott as unjustly denied freedom. Sanford's lawyers defended slavery as a legal and economic necessity. They argued the Constitution protected slavery as property. Emphasizing states' rights, they argued for state autonomy over slavery laws. Section 3, the decision, a body blow to freedom. On March 6, 1857, the United States Supreme Court delivered its verdict in the Dred Scott case. Chief Justice Roger B. Taney pronounced a ruling that struck a devastating blow to the hopes of Dred Scott and the abolitionist movement. The court ruled against Dred Scott, upholding his enslavement and denying his claim to freedom. The decision declared African Americans were not citizens and had no standing to sue in federal court. Section 4. The rationale, Taney's fatal interpretation. Chief Justice Roger B. Taney's Dred Scott decision tarnished his legacy, highlighting judicial activism rooted in prejudice. His opinion exposed deep societal divisions, setting the stage for the Civil War. Taney argued African Americans were not citizens and had no rights. He declared the Missouri Compromise unconstitutional, asserting Congress couldn't prohibit slavery in territories. Taney's opinion ignited controversy, reminding us of the fragility of freedom and the struggle for justice. Reactions to the Dred Scott decision. The Dred Scott decision reverberated throughout the nation, its impact felt in courtrooms, legislative chambers, and around family dinner tables. The decision ignited a firestorm of controversy, deepening the divide between North and South. Abolitionists denounced the decision as a travesty of justice and a victory for slavery. Frederick Douglass condemned the decision, stating it favored slavery and opposed freedom. Newspapers across the North echoed Douglass's sentiments, calling for resistance. In the South, the reaction was one of jubilation and relief. The decision was hailed as a victory for states' rights and their way of life. The Supreme Court rules on Dred Scott. The decision in the Dred Scott case arrived on March 6, 1857. Chief Justice Roger B. Taney delivered the majority opinion, a verdict that would reverberate for generations. The courtroom fell silent as Taney began to speak. The Supreme Court ruled against Dred Scott, denying his claim to freedom. The verdict pushed the nation closer to civil war. The Dred Scott decision exposed the fragility of freedom. It served as a reminder that the path to equality would be long and arduous. Section 2. No rights. Denying citizenship and its protections. Could African Americans be considered citizens of the United States entitled to rights and protections? The Supreme Court answered no, solidifying the marginalization of African Americans. Chief Justice Taney argued the Founding Fathers never intended to include African Americans as citizens. This interpretation relegated African Americans to second-class status. The decision left them vulnerable to discrimination, exploitation, and violence. The denial of citizenship had far-reaching implications, impacting millions for generations. Section 3. The Missouri Compromise struck down and discarded. The Dred Scott decision denied African American citizenship and struck down the Missouri Compromise. The court declared the compromise unconstitutional, opening new territories to slavery. Enacted in 1820, it prohibited slavery north of the 3630 parallel. The compromise was a fragile truce between pro-slavery and anti-slavery factions. The Supreme Court argued Congress overstepped by restricting slavery in territories. Slaveholders could transport their property anywhere in the U.S. The decision sent shockwaves through the nation, especially in the North. Section 4. A nation divided reactions to the Dred Scott verdict. The Dred Scott decision reverberated throughout the nation, its impact felt in courtrooms, legislative chambers, and around family dinner tables. The decision ignited a firestorm of controversy, deepening the divide between North and South. Abolitionists denounced the decision as a travesty of justice and a victory for slavery. Frederick Douglass condemned the decision, stating it favored slavery and opposed freedom. Newspapers across the North echoed Douglass's sentiments, calling for resistance. In the South, the reaction was one of jubilation and relief. The decision was hailed as a victory for states' rights and their way of life. To Section 5, the legacy of Dred Scott, a stain on American history. The Dred Scott decision, a nadir in American legal and social history, left an indelible stain on the nation's conscience, its legacy reverberating through the decades that followed. The decision, a testament to the enduring power of slavery and the pervasiveness of racism, served as a catalyst for the Civil War, a bloody conflict that would ultimately decide the fate of the nation and the institution of slavery itself. The Dred Scott case, far from resolving the issue of slavery, exacerbated existing tensions between North and South, pushing the nation closer to the brink of disunion. The decision galvanized the abolitionist movement, fueling their determination to eradicate slavery by any means necessary. The Dred Scott decision, while a devastating setback for the cause of freedom, ultimately served as a rallying cry for those who believed in the promise of equality for all. It highlighted the urgent need for reform, for a nation founded on the principles of liberty and justice to confront its own hypocrisy and strive to live up to its ideals. The legacy of Dred Scott continues to resonate today, a reminder of the fragility of freedom, the importance of vigilance in safeguarding civil rights, and the ongoing struggle to create a more just and equitable society for all. Fueling the fire, the Dred Scott decision and the escalation towards civil war. The Dred Scott decision, far from settling the question of slavery, served as a catalyst for further division and ultimately contributed to the outbreak of the Civil War. The court's ruling, widely perceived as a victory for slave power and a blow to the principles of freedom and equality, ignited a firestorm of controversy that swept through the nation, deepening the chasm between North and South. The decision's most immediate and significant impact was its invalidation of the Missouri Compromise, a long-standing agreement that had prohibited slavery in territories north of the 36 degrees 30 minutes parallel. This ruling effectively opened the door for the expansion of slavery into new territories, a prospect that horrified abolitionists and galvanized opposition to slavery in the North. The Dred Scott case, once a seemingly isolated legal dispute, had become a symbol of the nation's deepest moral and political crisis. The court's decision, widely seen as a gross miscarriage of justice, exposed the fault lines that threatened to tear the nation apart. The decision fueled a sense of urgency among abolitionists and anti-slavery advocates who recognized the need for a more unified and forceful response to the growing power of the slaveholding South. The stage was set for a showdown, a clash of ideologies and ambitions that would determine the fate of the nation and the future of freedom in America. A nation divided. The North and South react to the Dred Scott ruling. The Dred Scott decision landed like a thunderbolt across the nation. The North and South reacted with outrage, jubilation, and foreboding. In the North, the decision was met with outrage and condemnation. In the South, the reaction was one of jubilation and defiance. Political upheaval, the rise of the Republican Party and the fragmentation of the Democrats. The Dred Scott decision sent shockwaves through the American political landscape, accelerating the fragmentation of existing parties and paving the way for the emergence of new political forces. The decision's most profound impact was felt within the Democratic Party, the nation's oldest and most dominant political force, which found itself increasingly divided over the issue of slavery. Northern and Southern Democrats, long accustomed to finding common ground despite their differences on slavery, struggled to maintain party unity in the wake of the Dred Scott ruling. The decision's affirmation of slaveholders' property rights and its invalidation of the Missouri Compromise proved too much for many Northern Democrats to stomach. As the Democratic Party fractured along sectional lines, a new political force emerged, the Republican Party. Founded in 1854 on a platform of opposing the expansion of slavery, the Republican Party attracted a diverse coalition of abolitionists, anti-slavery Whigs, and disaffected Democrats. The Dred Scott decision proved to be a boon for the fledgling Republican Party, propelling its message of opposing slavery's expansion into the national spotlight. The decision galvanized support for the Republicans, particularly in the North, where it was seen as a moral and political imperative to resist the spread of slavery. Section 4. The End of Compromise, the Dred Scott decision and the inevitability of conflict. The Dred Scott decision marked a turning point, signaling the end of compromise and the likelihood of conflict. It hardened positions on both sides, making war almost inevitable. The ruling fueled Northern outrage and resistance to slavery. The abolitionist movement gained momentum. In the South, it emboldened slaveholders and fueled Southern nationalism. The decision made the Civil War all but inevitable. Section 1. A Nation Unraveled, the Dred Scott Decision and the Road to Civil War. The Dred Scott decision, a landmark ruling, shook the nation and highlighted the fragility of a divided country. Instead of settling slavery, it ignited controversy, pushing the nation towards civil war. The decision invalidated the Missouri Compromise, exposing the deep chasm between North and South. Seen as a victory for slave power, it fueled outrage and resistance against slavery's expansion. The decision galvanized the abolitionist movement, pushing slavery to the forefront of national consciousness. It exposed the moral bankruptcy of slavery, igniting resistance that led to the Civil War. The echoes of the decision reverberated across Civil War battlefields, determining the nation's fate and future freedom. Dred Scott's unfinished fight for freedom. Tragically, Dred Scott did not live to see emancipation. He died in 1858, a year after the Supreme Court's decision. His life is a testament to resilience and dignity. His struggle ignited a firestorm of controversy. His name became a rallying cry for abolitionists. Harriet Scott continued the fight for freedom. She lived to see the end of slavery in 1865. Dred Scott's legacy continues to inspire generations. Section 3, A Legacy of Struggle. The Dred Scott case and the ongoing quest for equality. The Dred Scott decision, a dark chapter in American legal history, continues to resonate today, a stark reminder of the fragility of freedom and the ongoing struggle for equality. The case, with its echoes of racial prejudice and judicial overreach, serves as a cautionary tale, urging vigilance in the face of injustice. The Dred Scott case highlights the importance of an independent judiciary, interpreting the Constitution fairly and impartially. Widely condemned as judicial activism, the decision reminds us that courts can be instruments of oppression. The case underscores the importance of civic engagement and the power of ordinary citizens to effect change. The abolitionist movement played a pivotal role in shaping public opinion and challenging the status quo. The struggle for equality, ignited by the Dred Scott decision, continues today, a testament to the enduring legacy of racism and discrimination.